Hey everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian of Super Podcasts, and welcome to the 11th edition of the Godzilla Diaries. For this one, I'm going to be talking about Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and as well as Godzilla vs. Mothra, Battle for Earth. So let's get right into it. First up, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Now, I'm not going to lie, this movie was a mixed bag for me. I think the first and third acts of the film are pretty damn good, but the second act is a complete mess, and I'm going to explain why. What made me very interested in this film at the beginning was, compared to other Godzilla films, is this one actually deals with time travel. So there's a time travel element to this one, and also in this one we also discover the origins of Godzilla, and as well as the origins of King Ghidorah. Well, at least in this timeline anyway, compared to the Showa period of the series. I'm not going to lie, I've seen a lot of time travel movies in my time. This film is makes no sense whatsoever as a time travel movie. This is the it's confusing, it's convoluted, it just does not make any sense. Like, for example, when as I was saying before, when the group of scientists, one of which includes the character of Mika, who, if you recall, is played by Megumi Odaka, and of course this is her, I believe. Now this is her second time playing the role, because she previously first appeared in Godzilla vs. Biollante, so this is her second time back in the role. And so her and a few others, plus the people of the future, sort of go back in time. They sort of stop Godzilla being made, but when they come back to the present, for some bizarre reason, like, if I know my time travel movies, and I do, like, if you erase something from the past, if you return to the present, that history of that person that you erase doesn't exist. Nobody knows who that person is and whatever. But for some bizarre reason, they erased Godzilla from history, or at least moved the original dinosaur that created Godzilla, moved him away. But somehow everyone in the present still knows who the hell Godzilla is. It doesn't make any sense, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant about this. It's so dumb. Like, and also the film. The second act of this film reminds me a lot of Ridley Scott's film Prometheus, because there are things in this second, like, nothing makes sense whatsoever, and characters do stuff that don't make sense at all. Like, this movie doesn't, this film throughout its second act pretty much nearly broke me in terms of just how dumb it is. It really does not make any sense whatsoever. The time travel, logistics, everything, characters, nothing makes sense whatsoever. And also, there's some weird attempts at humor that just don't work at all. Like, when they go back in time to 1944, two American Navy soldiers see, their ship, the time machine, fly to the island, and they don't want to report it. It's like, oh, we'll forget about it. And the captain says to his lieutenant, "This is something you can. We won't say anything about this that possible UFO that flew overhead, but this is something you can tell your young son when you get home, right, Mr. Spielberg?" And of course, it makes a reference to Steven Spielberg, and there are little moments like that that doesn't make sense at all. And also, like, there's an interesting thing about this film, because when the film came out, it got a lot of controversy, because it's basically said that the film had a very anti-American feel to it, with, like, cause it's a scene where American soldiers are attacking Japanese soldiers on Lagos Island, and then it's Godzillasaurus, I think they call him in the movie, the original little version of Godzilla, comes out and attacks and kills all the American soldiers. And of course, since in the future the Japan's going to be like the largest economical force in the world that's bigger than America, China, and Russia and that. So you got a bunch of white people from the future who go back in time and try to destroy Japan. I can definitely see why that could be. I don't, or it's kind of hard to say because the director says, "Oh, that intentionally made it to be like that," but then again, some people are very sus about that. But yeah, you can definitely see that in the movie. I'm not gonna lie. And also the third act, which it has Godzilla, because somehow they even though Godzilla wasn't, they moved Godzilla to another place. Somehow the new place where he moved to, somehow he got in contact with nuclear radiation and still became Godzilla. And he finds a nuclear submarine, destroys that, and somehow gets even bigger than he was in the previous films. This whole movie doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Although, like I said, the third act is pretty cool. Godzilla comes and sort of fights King Ghidorah, which is a pretty cool battle sequence, and he kills King Ghidorah. But then, of course, Godzilla, since in the Heisei series, he's back to his more evil, villainous self. He goes on rampage, destroys cities, and now the people realize, yeah, we should get King Ghidorah to help us now. So one of the people who, by the name of one of the future people, named Emmy, played by Anna Nakagawa, she sort of sees what her and her group are doing, and so she decides to save Japan from Godzilla and King Ghidorah. And of course, she goes into the future, finds the corpse of King Ghidorah, and transforms him into Mecha King Ghidorah. So he's a bit robotic. He loses one of his heads in the battle, so he's got a robot head, and so she's inside Mecha King Ghidorah, so controlling him to fight Godzilla. And it's a pretty cool fight, and of course defeats Godzilla in the end. And also the film sort of ends on a really dumb moment that just reminded me again of Prometheus. Is that you find out that Emmy is actually the descendant of the great granddaughter of the lead male character in this film, which comes out of nowhere, and it's very awkward because during the course of the film there's sort of this kind of romantic angle that sort of starts between the two. Nothing happens, but it's pretty odd and a bit awkward. But also I got to say this: there's an American actor in the film, Robert Scott Field. He in the film is an android who works for the future people, and I don't know. He's not a good actor at all, but I enjoyed his performance because basically he turns turncoat as well when Emmy reprograms him, and he's actually a pretty cool character. But there's a lot of times where I just kept. He's also unintentionally hilarious as well, and also, but there's one scene which reminded me of Terminator 2 where he's chasing after two characters in a car, and it's so bad, unintentionally hilarious. So yeah, but overall, this film is a mixed bag. Like I said, the first and last half, cool. The middle section, a complete utter mess. So if I had to rate this film, I'd give it about a 2.5. If the second act made any sense whatsoever, it probably would have been much higher. So yeah, that's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Now we're on to the next film, which of course is Godzilla vs. Mothra, or it's also known in some parts as Godzilla vs. Mothra Battle for Earth. Now, this one, along with King Ghidorah, they were actually the bigger hits of this period because, like I said in the previous, Biollante, the previous film before these two, wasn't a huge success, and people contributed that to the fact that there wasn't any familiar monsters in it. So with these two films, they brought two of the most famous monsters that Godzilla has fought, and this was they've been big hits in Japan. Godzilla vs. Mothra, I enjoyed this one. It's not a great movie by any means. It's a solid entry, but doesn't really add anything that you haven't already seen before. And also Megumi Odako, who of course plays the character Miki. She's back again for her third appearance as the character in this film. She's not in the movie much, so I was a bit disappointed by that because I do like her character a lot from what I've seen so far of her in the series. And also there's sort of the plot. I'll read the plot for this one very quickly. Where is it? Okay. The Earth is heading for disaster when an archaeological research team visits Infant Island to find out why they discover two tiny women who reveal that the Earth is fighting back for all the harm humans have done and sends out the evil Batra to destroy us. The Cosmos, the twin girls as they called, offer their help by calling Mothra to battle the creature. Unfortunately, Godzilla also appears and a freeway battle begins that threatens to destroy Japan. This one again, like anytime sort of Mothra does appear in any of these Godzilla films, it usually has a bit of a environmental message in it as well. So that's basically it. The message is a bit muddled, and also the sort of the origins of Mothra are also a bit slightly muddled in this one as well. But I do like the fact that we also do get an evil sort of version of Mothra in the form of Batra, who's actually a pretty cool villain for this piece, and sort of unlike, and of course they sort of at one point, like, he's pretty much evil for most part of the movie, and at some point he actually does change his tune and actually helps out Mothra to fight Godzilla. The cast are all pretty solid in this film. It's funny though because you sort of got this sort of this the sort of character at the sort of the main character of the film is like an Indiana Jones kind of type of character, and it's sort of reminded me a lot of the indie films, Indiana Jones films for the first half of the film. And he sort of teams up with his ex-wife to find out what's going on. Why is the Earth on the path of destruction? And of course they discover Mothra and all that, and you already know the plot from what I said before. So overall, it's like I said, solid film, pretty entertaining, solid cast. But I have to say though, it's kind of funny though because Mothra is supposed to be like the protector of Earth. And for some bizarre reason, like for at least half the film, he appears in his caterpillar form. And for some bizarre reason, at one point, he like the Cosmos, they get kidnapped by an evil corporation, and so Mothra goes out to find them and basically destroys tons of buildings on the way to look for them. So, which I found kind of bizarre, but it's like, Mothra, you're supposed to be the good guy. Why are you destroying everything? And people think Superman was bad in what he did in Man of Steel. They should see what Mothra does in this film. It's much worse. But then eventually he turns into the Moth version, as we all know and love. But I will say this: the third act, which is the sort of this big battle sequence between Mothra, Batra, and Godzilla, is actually pretty spectacular. I thought it was pretty awesome, and I have to give credit for this series, especially the last few films that I've been talking about. Credit for one thing, is that the design of the miniature cities that they create for these films, so that the monsters can fight or destroy and all that, is pretty spectacular. Especially in the third act of this film, because if you didn't know that that entire section that they were fighting in was a miniature, you would swear it was a real city. It just looked fantastic, and it was pretty cool. And I do like I said before, I did like the fact that Batra sort of starts off evil and eventually turns into a good guy during the last half. So I thought that was cool. But overall, solid Godzilla film. I enjoyed it. Not amazing by any means, but it's a lot of fun. So, and it's also cool to see Mothra again as well. So if I had to rate this one, I give it a solid 3.5 out of 5. Alrighty, that's the end of this 11th edition of the Godzilla Diaries. Keep a lookout very soon for the 12th edition, in which I'll be talking about Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. So keep a lookout for that one, and I'll see you all later. See everyone.